the great Peter Matthews. Firstly, one thing that's going to come out of this conversation, mate, I want to find out, what does Peter Matthews do? He's an auctioneer. He's the president of the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales. He's a co-founder of Realtair. Have I said co-founder of Realtair?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. He's an ex-business owner of one of the greatest real estate companies in the North. He was 100% in the world of training and education for many, many years, was a franchise executive. Right now, Peter, out of everything that you do, what do you reckon are the biggest things on your plate in life in real estate?
In life in real estate? No, that's a big question. So look,
I mean, you're auctioning every week. You're auctioning every weekend. Every weekend, you're out there in the trenches, and you obviously love it. I don't think you do it because you have to. I think you want to.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I enjoy it. You know, look, I like every auctioneer, Tom, like yourself. But Friday afternoon, the sole prize as they come through, I'm not going to lie, I do enjoy that as well. But I think the great position that I think you and I are in is that we're at the coalface. Whilst we're not in the lounge room listing and selling, we're actually at the point where the transaction takes place. And it's great to be able to have that firsthand knowledge, but then to be able to then look at how that comes together and say, well, how can we work on ways to improve that? And the real privilege that I have, I think, in my position now with Realtair, is that I've got 165 people that are dedicated to making that process better, making that process more streamlined, more efficient, and everything with a view of how can we make that better for the agent and their consumer. And I love looking at all those little nuances, and you say, it'd be good if we could do this, and you go, well, you know what, we've actually got the capacity where we can probably make that happen. That's a real.
Who's a consumer, Peter? Who's a consumer in real estate?
Well, I mean, you've got consumers everywhere. Consumer in real estate's a tenant, a landlord, a buyer, a seller. I mean, you could argue that even suppliers in the transactional chain are consumers in that process as well. But I think the thing that we probably have got really, really down pat is our consumer relationship with our seller, because that's a one-to-one. I reckon we're really, really good at that because we take years to build a relationship, to build trust for that vendor to choose us as their agent. Where we do have issues, and not necessarily that's specifically and generally, our fault, is we've got a relationship with buyers, which is a one-to-many. And that's a challenge because, we don't have that same attachment to all the buyers that we have to that particular seller. And I think that's an area of our industry that we can certainly work towards a better solution, which will provide better outcomes, I think, for not just agents, but also for buyers alike.
But can there be a solution, Peter? Because if you were kind enough to share your time at Mastery at an event that McGrath and I held last week, and we touched on, while you were on stage, talking about, it's like being at a David Jones store. You've got one vendor, you know what their story is, but you've got 150 people that are coming through the front doors at David Jones. You don't know what the story is. There's no relationship there. There's no trust in there. And it appears that most of the complaints that happen in real estate, and most of the reasons why real estate agents don't score top of the list in occupations, is more to do with the buyer than the seller.
Yeah, it is. And, I think I said this on stage, Tom, I've got this, it's a fortunate and unfortunate memory. And it would have been probably, around the time that you and I crossed paths, where you went out of Ray White Bankstown and I came in, or a few years either side of that. And I remember being at a barbecue and just someone I'd never met before said, "Oh, what do you do?" And it was that moment where I wasn't sure if I really wanted to tell them that I was an agent, even though I'm incredibly proud of that today. Then I wasn't sure, because we had, our perception in the marketplace was not great. I don't think it's improved greatly in the public eye, but, what I know about what we do now, I wouldn't have any hesitation in saying I'm an agent. In fact, I'm very proud of it, as I said before. But that moment was really crystallizing for me, because whilst that person that I met would say, "Oh, well, that's all fine. I'm sure that you're not one of those agents." The reality is that they tar us all with the same brush. And that's a buying experience. Very seldom is that a selling experience. And the thing that I want to have influence on in my role at the REI, but also in my role at Realtair, is be able to change that perception, And I think that we can do that through better communication and better transparency, particularly around the sales transaction process for buyers.
And I read a beautiful line, and I think it was relating Seth Godin. Seth Godin was talking about, I think, Steve Jobs. He says, people don't buy what you do, they buy while you're doing it. And what you've just basically said there is you've got this underlying philosophy that you believe, whether it's through Realtair, REI, or whatever mechanism, you believe that there is a better way, right?
I do, yeah, wholeheartedly. But also, Tom, you and I have been really lucky, right? We've met thousands of agents, thousands of business owners, property managers, everyone else, and our industry unfortunately gets tarred with this brush that's unfair. It's unfair because a lot of the regulation is not really clear. Buyers don't really know what goes on, and consumers generally don't really know what our role is in the community. But you then go and look at agents and you say, well, what do we actually do? Well, we help people sort of move through the biggest decisions in their lives in some instances. Selling a family home, and you've had plenty of them, I'm sure, where you've had tears, where that family that's let it go, even though they're moving on in their lives, it's been such an emotional experience. We also then, in times of crisis, we all come together as an industry and we support our communities. But even outside of that, if you were to add up every dollar that was spent in communities, sponsoring everything from the local football club to the Rotary and other charitable organizations and things like that, the real estate industry would have to be one of the highest contributors to support others. And it's all of that kind of sits behind everything that I think about in terms of our perception and what we can do to change that drives that agenda to say that, you know, we can do better. And there are ways, you know, there's ways that we can take advantage of technology. And I just feel, as I said earlier, really, really privileged, Tom, to be able to have a team of people that can, you know, I can observe those things, learn from people like yourself, and then deploy some solutions that can make a real difference.
Okay. We're talking about 2 or 3 topics today. We're going to talk about, you know, hybrid auctions. We're going to talk about some of the processes, but it's all underpinned by this thing that everyone seems to be talking about at the moment, which is transparency, you know? And it's really fascinating because I often get asked by relos or close friends, and they say to me, Pete, they say, mate, you know, we've seen this property in, you know, Balmain. We want to buy it and we just want to find. And I reckon I don't have a stock standard. Like, I don't have a stock stand. Like, if you turned around and said to me, hey, Tommy, I want to go get a MacBook Pro 14, what do I do? Mate, go to the Apple shop, right? And go there. You know, this is going to be the price. It's pretty much non-negotiable. But when someone, Peter, asks you, mate, I've seen this property in Balmain, it's like there's no stock standard answer on what you should say to this person to buy the property. And I reckon a lot of it's got to do is that a lot of the variables are not transparent. Oh, is it auction? Do they want to sell beforehand? Is it for sale? What are they saying? You know what I mean? Let's talk about the sales transaction process and how we can improve transparency in that part of the process.
Yeah, well, I reckon you could ask a group of agents like we did at your conference the other day and say, well, have you bought a property recently? And, you know, as long as you didn't buy it through your own agency, what was the experience like? Did you enjoy it? Would you repeat it again? Would there be anything?
Well, you asked that question.
Yeah, no one was happy. So, you know, a room full of agents and nobody was actually satisfied with even their process. And that's what they do every single day. And you can imagine a buyer coming into our world, right? That we're transacting every single day. And there's been a huge amount of transactions that go on. And they walk into our office and they could be dealt with in the same business under the same brand and have 2 completely different negotiation strategies that agent deploys, and none of them right or wrong, just different. And that's the first point, I think, that makes the journey for a buyer very, very different to that of a seller. The other part of it too is that you look at what you and I do as our professional hobby, I like to call it, in the auctioneering space. If you go to an auction, what you know is that you sign up to a series of rules. The rules of engagement or auction are really, really clear. Every state's got them. We have to even announce them before we do the auction or part thereof, but they know what they're signing up for and they know what they need to do in order to buy that property. You then look at the fact that there's 18% of properties that are actually sold at auction. There's 82% that are sold by private treaty, including sole priors. And you say, which means 82% of properties, there isn't any set of rules of engagement that say this is how you deal with a property that's for sale with a price or being bought before auction. And because there are no rules, that's why you end up with all these different variables, as you said before, because there's nothing that's clear about how do I buy before auction, how do I make an offer on a property, and all those sort of things. But you look at what we've got today and you kind of say, well, no wonder we have this problem, because we don't have those rules. We don't have consistency. And obviously, if we don't have a set of rules and we don't have consistency in that process, well, then it does create a lack of trust in that process, because it is different every single time.
All right. Well, so I want to touch on now on how Realtair, and unashamedly, you know, I'm an ambassador, and I'm very proud to be involved with Realtair, because even in just the first 8 weeks, Peter, we've only touched the surface. Just 2 or 3 products in Realtair are telling me. So I just finished a session. Who was it with this morning? Let me just think. I had. Let me just look at my calendar, because they were raving about it. And they said, Tom, you don't have to go any further. Marcus Salvatore. That's it. Marcus Salvatore from McDonald's in the Sutherland Shire. He said, mate, it's changed our business. The digital price update and the digital pre-list have changed our business, right? So this hasn't been the main focus for the first 8 weeks. But Peter, Realtair has actually done things to try and help the sales transaction process by improving transparency. And I want to touch on that. Is that a good thing for us to be talking about today?
Yeah. It's probably the thing I'm most passionate about, Tom, and I'm really thrilled to hear that sort of feedback from customers. And I guess my mantra, which is the company mantra, is that you know, we've got to be really proud about what we've done today, but then we've got to be, you know, unsatisfied with that tomorrow. Because the thing about the one thing I've learned about technology, and you know, I'm a real estate agent, right? I'm an auctioneer. I'm not a tech guy. I've learned a lot about tech. One thing I've learned about tech, it's like having a boat. You know, you never ever stop putting money into it, right? But the thing is that you've just got to keep innovating. And I love having conversations with customers who say, you know, this is great, it's fantastic, but it'd be good if. And it's those statements, it'd be good if, that if we've got that opportunity, then turn into something that solves a problem for an agent and their customer. But look, to get onto that transparency side, I mean, the sales transaction stuff, like, you know, that we do, we've got Pitch for all the digital prospecting, digital introductions, proposals, all that kind of stuff. It all talks to each other. We talk to CRMs, it pushes information backwards and forwards. We Sign is probably our second, you know, marquee product. Digital signatories, contracts, agency agreements, all that kind of stuff, you know that. And also Sign Anything in that, which is like a DocuSign equivalent inside of it. But it's all process orientated, and it's all orientated around the processes that exist from prospecting the listing right through to listing the property in those 2 products and actually getting it live. Our next sort of big place was the sell component. So a lot of people watching this would be aware of Auction Now, particularly in the COVID years.
Yeah.
Auction Now, you know, I had all this great feedback early where they said to me, oh, you know, you guys just absolutely picked the right timing to acquire Auction Now from Damien Cooley. Damien came on board and we merged our 2 businesses together. No one had any idea about COVID, so it wasn't good timing. It wasn't good management. It was just good luck, to be honest. But we didn't buy that business and merge that into Realtair for any other reason. It wasn't about the live auctions and all that, which has been terrific. It's been incredible. But it was all about saying, well, there's a process to transact an auction. We want to take that same process and be able to transact a private treaty listing. And that's been able to manage everything from the inquiry to the offer to the engagement of that offer, potentially to take that competitive situation and turn it into a timed auction, which I'm sure we'll talk about, or to move that buyer through the process to get them in as a registered bidder on a live auction or a hybrid auction or even a pure online auction, and then take it even a step further to create the transaction where we can digitally execute the contracts, but then to take it a step further again and be able to digitally receipt the deposit and do that securely so it can drop directly into the agent's trust account with the flick of one button. Actually, it's two buttons to get the deposit into the trust account. And it's that process, Tom, that I think is the part of our industry, whether it's a Realtair product or something else, that if agents embrace dealing with offers and dealing with that negotiation process in a digital format, it creates a whole range of benefits for the agent as well as the consumer. One of those being transparency. And ultimately that comes from a consistent process. And then the end game, I guess, for all concerned is that, it's auditable. So if something is going to be queried, there's date stamps and time stamps across the whole process.
So Pete, at the conference last week, there was a guy sitting in the front row and he said, just to simplify it, like just picture what Realtair's process is. It's the eBay of auctions. I think they were the words he said. He was very simplistic in it.
Yes.
Right? What's your response to that?
It's actually pretty accurate, Tom. And look, timed auctions have been around for quite some time. And like things that become really popular at a certain time, they weren't invented then and became popular. They were invented a long time ago. And as you know, in the real estate industry, change management is a big thing. The timed auction has been and also the timed sale has been really popular because it actually is another very transparent way to be able to take a competitive situation and be able to say, right, if you want to make an offer on the property, rather than going to highest and best, we're going to put a deadline on the auction. It's going to count down. You're going to get all the notifications. We're going to be able to broadcast messages to you every single time an offer is made on the property. That becomes a bid, and then it will count down. And once it gets inside of 5 minutes of the deadline, any offer that comes in extends back to 5 minutes. So if you can imagine from a consumer's perspective that the choices that they've got is right now, you kind of have a competitive pre-auction situation. So you go to highest and best. And I don't know too many buyers that have walked away from a highest and best not winning and saying, that was great. I really loved that. I really enjoyed that, because no one said that ever, right? But when you go into a timed auction situation, effectively a buyer has got time to make that decision. And whilst it is transparent as well, because, the prices are disclosed, there is pressure on them because the clock is ticking, right? And you get inside that 5 minutes and you can see it clicking down, and then a bid gets made and it pops back up to 5 minutes. And every single person involved in that process is notified automatically. So from an agent's perspective, you don't need to be worried about, did I send an SMS to that person? Did I call that person? And you only worry about all of those things after the fact. In this instance, all this happens automatically and the agent's always in control of that process. They get to manage the bids, bid increments. They get to manage the starting bid price. It's all still subject to a reserve. They can maneuver those. They can pause the auction if they need to. They can extend the auction if they need to. And the feedback that we've got from buyers, Tom, has been fantastic. In fact, the fact that people reach out to our platform, which is we're not involved other than orchestrating that sale, we've received emails from buyers to say that they really, really appreciated the transparency. And that's been a great eye opener for me, because I've looked at that and said, well, what would I prefer as a consumer? Would I prefer the unknown and having to go into this highest and best, or would I prefer to be able to deal with knowing what I can do next? I've got an opportunity to place a bid, and I can do that in a reasonable period of time. 5 minutes is a long time, unlike an auction that we do, as you know, on the weekend. You got the threat of the hammer coming. They might have 30 seconds to make a decision. So it's been a really, really successful way of transacting property, particularly pre-auction.
So Pete, is it a big learning curve? Because maybe there's agents that are listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, man, I'm going to have to be really tech savvy to be able to learn how to do this. Is that the case?
No.
I mean,
no. It's so easy. I mean, I guess most agents would have used a technology platform to transact property over the last 2 years. Like, there'd be very few that haven't touched one of the many programs that are out in the marketplace today. And, we do similar things to, one of our major competitors who, has created a whole new method of sale around this. Our process is not a new method of sale. It's just taking private treaty negotiations. So you can do negotiations one-to-one through the platform and create a contract and get it sold and collect the deposit. You can create a competitive situation where you can create a timed sale really simply, or a timed auction. I'll come back to the difference in that. Or you can take them through the process to register to bid for a live or a hybrid auction. So it's not
time sale versus time auction. Just while that's fresh, what's the difference?
It's all it is really, Tom, is that you've got the ability on a private treaty sale, particularly in markets where you've got a high number of first-time buyers that may not be able to compete under the auction terms. You can create a competitive environment, which results in a contract at the end, which is subject to, in New South Wales as an example, a 5-day cooling off. So it's not an unconditional agreement. Obviously, with an auctioneer overseeing the property, that becomes a timed auction and becomes an unconditional result. But a timed sale allows a conditional outcome to occur. And that's been really, really popular, particularly in private treaty markets, because you can create that competition, but you still, you don't then move into an unconditional environment. So it means that it opens it up to a much, much broader market.
And the marketplace that we've moved into for a lot of Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, and also starting to see it through Queensland, which I consider, Pete, is gone from nuts to normal. All of a sudden, there's this appetite from agents that are saying, what can I do to create some sort of urgency that existed in 2021 when there was fear of missing out? The fear of missing out is gone, and they're looking for something in the way that they market and transact property to create urgency. This sounds like it's perfect timing.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, the urgency thing, like you can imagine, look, what are the alternatives if you're trying to create that urgency? Your alternatives are in an environment where it might not be that you can have people that can arrive at an unconditional position. So you'd have to say, right, well, I need you to get registered. I need you to do all these things, and they're going to be ready to go, and everything's got to be set up. You then say, well, look, okay, now we've got this situation where you've got an absolutely broad market, somebody who can register for the time sale or the timed auction from their phone. They can register from a QR code at the open for inspection, or they can register from the link that gets sent to them from the agent, or in some instances where we've got integrations with customers and their websites, they can actually go directly from the website and go and register or make an offer themselves from the agent's website themselves. That means that, you know, a buyer who may not want to participate in a highest and best and a rush to exchange can participate in this, and they can see whether it's worthwhile for them to proceed or not. Because one of the things that just, you know, I'm sure you've found this too, and agents, you know, on this Zoom will understand, you don't want to leave anything on the table, right? You want to make sure that your job as an agent, you get the best that you can from the market. So what you want to do is make sure that you've got as much opportunity for buyers of all different levels, buyers of different levels of confidence, buyers of different levels in pricing, and buyers at different stages of their buying needs to have an opportunity to buy this particular property and compete on it. And I think that's the beauty of having time sales and timed auctions, because it does open it up to a much, much broader market. And I feel personally that it provides the agent with great confidence that they haven't left any stone unturned, because that buyer could be sitting in New York, or that buyer could be sitting in, you know, 2 suburbs across from where the agents got the property for sale. Either way, they've all got a fair opportunity to be able to buy the home.
Okay. Well, I always like to, you know, if questions are coming up, do you mind if I bring them up to you?
No, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So Rory says, how do you combat the argument that you might only be getting the second best price, you know, for the property, you know, which I suppose you could turn around and talk about in normal auctions.
I was going to say,
anyway,
that sounds like a comment from back in the Genman days.
Mate, you took the words out of my mouth, because actually, Rory, I'm not quite sure how old you are, but there was a gentleman that had his name was Neil Genman, and he had a motto that auctions got you the second best price. I mean, you know, one could argue, like I've got to tell you, Peter, one could argue that you don't know what price you got with a private treaty at all, right? You might have got the 100th worst price, right? We don't know that. But one thing I know, Pete, is that there are so many weekends that I do auctions that properties sell for way over reserve, and there was a possibility the 3 days beforehand the owner was going to accept the number, which would have been 100 grand less. I see that all the time, and I think to myself, thank God the agent wasn't skilled enough to get that offer accepted, maybe, right? Or good decision making by the vendor, or good decision making by the agent and the vendor. Hopefully, that would have been the case. So I think Rory.
Rory's Tassie. Yeah.
1% of the auction mark. So Tassie's 1% auction mark. Is it that low? Wow.
Yeah. But I think the thing that that's been really interesting about this, Rory, is that the time sale particularly is actually being most prevalent in private treaty markets. Like if you look at Campbelltown in Sydney, it's not a very high auction orientated market. That's been probably one of our major headways has been there. Coastal markets and rural markets across the country have also been really, really popular with the time sale and the timed auction. So it's actually been the opposite. It's not the high auction orientated markets that are actually as much focused on that, because they've already got a process. It's the private treaty markets where we've probably had the most uptake, because there isn't any defined process, as I mentioned earlier.
Which is most of the market in Australia, isn't it? Like, I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers are. What do you reckon it is, Peter?
82% was the last. I think I got that from REA. 82% of transactions are done either by private treaty or prior to auction. There's only 18% of properties sold at auction. So everything that sells before is a private treaty negotiation.
Alicia's just asked, who can use Realtair? Can it be used by the homeowner? Can the homeowner use Realtair?
No.
Right.
No.
So
we're not a platform for sellers. I mean, look, we've got lots of great communication tools for sellers. The Realtair platform is designed by agents for agents. Everything that I've learned over the last 32 years of being an agent, which, you know, let's face it, it's been a paper world. We've just taken that from prospecting through to settlement, and we've digitized that in a workflow that makes sense for agents. We've tried to eliminate duplication. We've integrated with a whole series of partner platforms like CRMs, marketing platforms, payment gateways, trust account systems, whole range of different platforms. And the idea of all of that is really just to make the agent's process much more efficient, streamlined, compliant, and most importantly, I think, is to be able to make that process to be able to be done from anywhere. So you can do it from Tassie, you can do it from your dining table at Tassie, or you can do it from the dining table of your customer. But as far as products for sellers, we assist in the communication that the agent has got control over to make sure that the vendor and the buyer in this process understand exactly where everything's up to. So the agent controls all that.
So right at the moment, gang, if you're a girl or guy agent that are starting to feel the choppy waters with the change of the marketplace, if you're in a marketplace that you've got, let's call it outside inner city, outside inner Melbourne, where you've got people that are just auction mode people, right? Which is only a small sector of the whole transactions that take place in Australia. But you want to get the benefits of auction, but i.e. first home buyers, or it's just not a marketplace that is equipped to the unconditional sale, but you want the benefits of scarcity, fear of missing out, competition. Timed auctions are a good option. Rory's love the concept, by the way. Simply put, the buyers only have themselves to blame if they miss out, and not the agent or vendor. That's a good point, because you've taken control as a buyer of your own decisions, right? So you can't walk away and say, I got ripped off. You know, you simply chose not to participate at some point. Now, I hate avoiding questions. Rocco asked, is this, with Realtair, is it charged per property, per auction? I mean, I know that you've got the way that you run your business, you've got lots of models, you know. Is there a simple answer to how you pay for that?
So there's, I mean, if you're an agent or a principal, you can operate for one or two structures. You can have either a pay on a per property basis, or you can actually sign up for a subscription. So you could do a time sale every now and then if you want to. You could do an online auction every now and then. But if you want to use the Realtair Sell platform, where you've got deposits. Well, let me just take you through that quickly. You can deal with all your offers digitally. So that, and what I mean with all of that is you can receive the offer. You can even augment the questions that you want to ask for that offer as it comes through, which obviously you can decide whether, when to send that on to your seller. You can manage those offers to a contract. So you can execute a contract inside of the system. You can create a timed auction, a timed sale, as many of those as you like, and also do live auctions, even in hybrid as well as purely online if you want to. So you can do in-room auctions and on-site auctions with an online component. You can do all of those things. You can also receipt the deposit securely. So it's got a two-factor authentication for every contract to be able to receipt that. It's banking agnostic. So it doesn't matter which trust account you have, doesn't matter which account your customer has. As long as they've got the funds, we can actually securely pull that through via direct debit. So it also overrides any limits. And we can also, which is quite prevalent at the moment, Tom, in the Sell platform, which is the subscription platform, you can actually also, at 2 weeks before settlement, we send a notification to the seller, which is a two-factor authentication, which then creates the opportunity for them to put their bank account details in, comes directly to the person nominated by the principal. They click on that link, add the bank account details to the bank, they do the transfer. And that's probably one of the areas that's one of the most risky, the receiving of the deposit and the actual disbursement of the deposit. And we handle that with the two-factor authentication securely. And that's all inside of the Sell platform. So Realtair's got pitch, sign, sell. If you wanted the whole thing and do unlimited transactions on all of that, it's $165 per agent per month if you wanted to do that. And that would mean that you could directly.
And that to me, gang, that to me, I don't know what that was. That's about $1,000 a year, just a touch over $1,000 a year. You've got everything covered. You've got, you can rip up those collated 11-page reports that you send your PA out for a 1-hour drive to put it under someone's door, which is never actually read, because chances are they don't look at that stuff. They're looking at their mobile phone. So you could throw those away. You'd have, every property would have a digital pre-list. Then you'd have, of course, you'd have that wonderful, which I don't want to harp on it because I'm obsessed with it, Peter. I just have agents that are telling me, Tom, if I just keep pumping out digital price updates, I keep getting appraisals. There's a link between that, totally correlated. Then, in addition to that, if you enter this ecosystem, which to me, Peter, I've got to tell you, even after 34 years of real estate, and let's call out of the 34, 25 doing auctions, mate, I still, again, the deposit on the day with auctions. It's always this awkward moment. Oh, okay, you got the check. Oh, we don't have a checkbook. All right, we'll drop it on Monday. Oh, mate, I got some money. It's just this, always this conversation. Oh, what? Then they look at their partner. How much can we transfer? So I just want to ask you, if you were to go on the total subscription, right, the 165 per salesperson, does that cover how deposits are collected?
Yeah,
you covered that, didn't? Right.
Covers all of that. It also does the, as I said earlier, and I reckon this is one of the most risky parts around the country. You probably heard that there was some news the other day. Somebody transferred $57,000 to the wrong account. Now, the agent followed a process, which was to get it all in writing. They got it in writing, except somebody had hacked the vendor's account. If they used our platform, it's a two-factor authentication linked to their mobile, and that wouldn't have happened. Now, the agent isn't liable for that because they've got a process in place, but the customer lost $57,000. So in that, we do everything around the transaction, around the signing of agency agreements and all that kind of stuff, plus all the prospecting, as well as presenting through pitch that we talked about earlier. But I'll just there was a question I saw pop up where it said, how do you know that? How do you identify buyers to bid?
How do you make sure that a buyer is legitimately able to bid? I think the question is.
So that's a really good question. And that's, I mean, it's a really simple answer. A buyer is approved by the agent. So even if they make an offer, they're going to identify themselves. So you'd never receive or take an offer seriously from somebody that you don't know, that hasn't inspected the property, that maybe hasn't reviewed the contract. You also wouldn't allow someone just to turn up to the auction without knowing who they were, because it's okay to get their bid, but then you've got to get them to sign the contract and you've got to get the deposit off them, right, which can be a challenge. So anybody that is intending to bid on the property, it becomes through as a bidding request. They have to put it's all self-registered data, Tom, so they need to put all their own data in. They then add their driver's license so we can identify them, just like you would at any other auction registration in the physical world. That is then, if the agent then approves that, then they're okay to bid and we're good to go. And they receive all the documentation that they need to receive in relation to the rules and regulations that exist in that state when they are at that point of registration.
All righty, Pete, I don't know, again, making sure that I answer questions and I don't want us to be seen evasive. Rory says, love the concept, simply put the buyers on. Yeah, no, we covered that one. Thanks for, Andy McIntyre, what's the main difference between open negotiation and this platform as far as auction is concerned? Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Open have done a really good job to bring, I guess, to light the ability to be able to negotiate in a digital world and have as I said before, have a set of rules of engagement, which is effectively a platform. We do the same thing in that respect. However, I guess we're not trying to reinvent a new method of sale. So an agency agreement is not required to be signed that's separate to what would be normally apparent in each individual market. So an auction authority is still an auction authority. It's not a new method of sale. That's probably the first point. The second point is that process-wise, it would be quite similar. But what we actually do is not only do we digitally execute the contract and create an exchange process, all the documentation that sits around that needs to go to the buyer, the seller, the conveyancers, or even settlement agents is all automatically generated. But also too, as I said earlier, we receive the deposit and we deposit that directly into the agent's trust account. And all of that is audited and all of that is able to be seen on a dashboard by every single party. And then of course you've got the equally important part of dispersing the balance of that 10% deposit to make sure that the consumer that you've just transacted with actually gets paid the full balance of their purchase price as they deserve in that side of things. And probably the last point, Tom, is that we've got you can do a transaction with Realtair through Realtair Sell on a one-off basis. But if you're using the subscription, you can, if you're just using Sell on its own, it's $99 a month. So as opposed to, I think, open negotiation, $500 per property. What a lot of our customers do, Tom, is that because they're using the Realtair platform to transact property, they actually pass on a digital $99 to $199 that their vendors pay for in the marketing budget. So in some instances, we've got agents who don't actually pay anything for the platform. It's all funded by vendor marketing.
How does, Pete, let's assume right now someone's watching this on Facebook or on Zoom and they turn around and say, you know what, man, my office is not doing it. I want to explore, like, what's the next step? What's the process of contact with Realtair? Is there an email? Is there, who do they hit up?
Oh, look, you can contact support@realtair.com or sales@realtair.com. We've got a 1300 number as well that you can contact. We're easily Google. We just upgraded our website, so go to realtair.com and we can help you out with that. I think the thing that that everything that we're doing is it's our whole mantra is that we're agents. We're designing the technology from agents. We are forever updating, upgrading our platform based on feedback that we get from agents. And I think, as we talked about the other day, Tom, where you sit there and you go, imagine if you could do this. And then all of a sudden that imagine if can then be translated into something that makes a marked difference in the lives of agents and their consumers. And I feel that as an industry, that if we don't adopt a digital platform, and it doesn't have to be a single one, it just might be many, but adopt a digital in everything that we do, from when we first engage with buyers from portals, to dealing with buyers at the open for inspection, to then using technology with respect to the management of offers, to using technology for the receiving of deposits. We've got to move into that space. We've been a paper industry for a very long period of time. And the thing that I appreciate for every single agent that's watching this is that if you looked at all the different tech options that are out there, like I did before we I guess, invented Realtair, for want of a better description, is that I couldn't find anything where everything was visible in one place. With the Realtair platform, whether it's if you were to go into, if I listed my house in Cremorne, you could go into Claude Avenue, you could look at that property in one place, see every engagement you've had with your price update, how many times your customer looked at it. You could see the proposal that you created. You could also then, at the same time too, look at the agency agreement that you've created. You could see what VOIs are still to come or when they've been done. You can click on that. You can see the contract in that area. You can see the bidding record of what happened at the auction. You can see the way that the offer has been managed. You know, the date, the time, and the fact that the deposit's been receipted. And you can see the date, the time, and the fact that the deposit has been dispersed. And you can see all that in one platform. And we integrate with all the major CRMs. So we push and pull information from those CRMs so that we absolutely, minimize at almost to a point of elimination, duplication. And that's one thing I'm really passionate about. I got a home loan the other day, Tom. 18 times I had to enter my name, my telephone number, my contact details, and my address, and I've banked with the same bank for 20 years. And that's the sort of stuff that you go, that's just, disruption's a bad thing. Enhancement is what's required. And I just feel really privileged to be in the position really to be able to assist in the innovation of how agents can manage their relationship with their customers.
Yeah. And Bianca's been kind enough to actually put a link there. Susan's been kind enough to actually give you a link there to get more involved. Listen, I mean, I know it's got my name on it there. It's not like I've got a relationship with Realtair. It doesn't matter which way you go through. The main thing is, if you want to make the shift to become a high-tech, high-touch agent, I reckon this is what it's about. And the reason I say it is, Pete, a lot of the tech products I see come in real estate are actually done with the architect being a tech person, not the architect being someone from the industry. Whereas I think you, Lee, and the fact that you've got a lot of people, I notice a lot of people in your business are either calling auctions or involved in education and training. They sort of understand how the agent is thinking, right? So what happens is you build based on the pain point, not create a product and then say, have this is good for you, right? You start off with people saying, I'm sick of this, help me, but Pete, we're going to have you on again maybe next month or the month over. I'm 2022 is the year that I think real estate agents have to go pro. It was only 30 years ago, Pete, just before I joined Ray White Bankstown. I'll never forget it. John Alsnet at the Professionals at Padstow came in. He got the whole sales team around and he said, hey, everyone. And he pulled a piece of paper and he put it into a fax machine. And he said, from now on, we don't have to go to the post office and send this off to the solicitor. That was only like 30 years ago. It was like this piece of paper is going to show up at a solicitor's office. No stamps, no typing letters. It just goes through. And I look at what we've got available right now. Man, I reckon, Pete, from what I can see, I reckon there's a good chance an agent will be able to write 600 to 800 in GCI, might not have to put on an assistant that early if they can just have technology to complement them, not to substitute them, to complement them. And they can have a really good life, seamless, hassle-free, happy customers, and I reckon 2022 has got to be the year that, I'm using my influence in my community with real estate to get them on this path.
Tom, it reminds me of a very good friend of yours and mine who I won't mention his name, but he was on Hayman Island and he rang me from Hayman Island and he goes, I love you. And I went, okay. And I thought maybe he'd had a few too many cocktails. And he said, do you know what I've done today? He said, I've sat by the pool all day. I have listed a property and I've exchanged a property from my banana chair. And I've got to tell you, that was probably one of my most proudest moments because you know, you look at our industry and, you know, the thing that when you become a real estate agent that no one ever tells you, and you know, Tom, is that you turn the on button on and it never goes off because you're accessible, you're in the public eye. When you drive your car, when you walk the street, when you buy your milk, everything that you do, you go to the movies, and when you're standing at the open for inspection or you stand at the auction, you're on show, and it is really hard to get away. And when you're away, in the past, it's been really, really difficult to be able to maintain your work. And as you know, if you're not continually working your pipeline, if you're not taking advantage of those moments where you can sign up a contract, you know, time kills deals. You know, what our another mantra of ours, which we've got a marketing campaign coming out, just saying that, you know, we're giving agents time, and then it's a choice of what they do with that time. By creating efficiency, we provide time. Choose whether you invest that in yourself, in your family, or invest that in your business, but, you know, give back time. And when I heard that he did that from Hayman Island, I was a little bit jealous in one instance, but I was just completely proud that he was able to do that and do it so easily whilst he was on holidays, and just keep the fire burning even when he's enjoying himself.
That's beautiful. Guys and girls, 26th of April, we are having our official launch of Pitch for Real Estate Gym members. We're deliberately delaying it to the 26th. We know that a lot of people are moving into Easter holiday mode, Anzac Day, all that sort of stuff. We have been working with the team, particularly Bianca, to producing, and don't get me wrong, you've got some of the clients, I've looked at a lot of the documents that, you know, you've produced. You've got some of the best clients in Australia that are using it. But, you know, we wanted to create something that would allow all real estate gym members to feel like, hey, they've got this competitive advantage. And man, I'm just pumped on the 26th. Pete, it'd be good to have you on. I'd love to have you on. I'd love to have Leon. I want to make it a big thing. And I also would love to get a client at the moment, Pete, that's absolutely crushing it with the product. So if the four of us are on, so
how about I bring you a guy, Tom, that's just late 30s, 4 kids, age 2, 4, 6, and 8, going to write $1 million in com this year, no PA. Does it all on the platform.
Okay.
I'll bring.
Is that Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane? Where's he from?
In Sydney. Yeah.
Okay. Pete, can you see if you can lock him in?
Yeah, it'll be fine. I'm sure.
Okay, beautiful. David says, how can you join the gym? Just go to the Real Estate Gym website. It's closed now, but you just get on the wait list. Annette Pickerton has asked, can a seller make and record a vendor bid at an auction? Well, yeah, I didn't cover that.
Yeah, you can. Yep. It's got the capacity for that. So you can do a vendor bid at any stage, and it's also nominated as a vendor bid. So it's fully recorded as that. Buyers also get notified that it is a vendor's bid. So it's all completely transparent. You can do that on the platform. You can do it as a live auction or as a hybrid auction. Really, really easy. And the great thing about that is anybody watching the auction as well sees the full bidding record of all the offers that have come through, including if that is a vendor's bid.
All right. To our viewers, listeners, Facebook, social media, consumers, have a great Easter. Have a good break. Pete, thank you as always. Enjoy this Saturday off. I presume you're not going to be auctioning at all this Saturday.
No, I've got auctions on Saturday. Don't worry.
You do?
You know, it's been full on with Sydney auctions at the moment. Last Saturday was just chaos. And yeah, this Saturday, but I'm not going to lie. I'm hoping that they're going to be able to do a deal prior, but you know, we'll wait and see.
He looks at his Friday. He looks at his phone on a Friday night 3 times as many times to see what's happened.
Mate, I do. And I cross my.
All right, Pete.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks a lot.